and start recording. I think I have some technical difficulties here today. Let's try again. Today I'm going to be talking to you about leadership versus management styles. And the reason I chose this topic as opposed to my usual helping empower the youth with careers guidance and careers education is because what I'd like to start doing is having conversations with career practitioners and leaders and young people all in the room together. And leadership is it's the trending tagline that we hear very often when we talk about the world of work. It's a tagline that we see in schools. It's a tagline that we see in the workplace. And it almost becomes that objective that we expect young people to be striving for. At this time of the year, we have graduating students from across the globe beginning to receive acceptance into their university choices. And in writing those letters of application or college statements or college essays or personal statements, whatever you want to call it, students have to write a letter to the university showing how they've taken on leadership roles on their career journey. But the question that I always ask myself is, how are we teaching them what leadership is? And is it leadership or is it a management style that we are teaching our young people? So that's what the focus of my talk is today. By the end of today, we're going to be talking about my experiences. So everything that I'm bringing to you today is my experience. I'm going to bring stories of my examples, a little bit of the theory of leadership, and of course, some of the actions that I take. And I'd like to encourage anybody on this call to really take on what I'm going to be doing. And anyone that works with me in any capacity, whether it be at Desk Careers at Dubai English Speaking College or for the UAE Careers Community in collaboration with career practitioners across the region, or on my social project, #Strong, or even in my role as mom at home. One thing that most people will be able to say is that I don't just preach, I actually put into action the things that I do. And there's a lot of self-reflection in my experiences as well. And why I'm saying this is because when we're trying to support young people with careers education and careers guidance, the one thing we forget, and I know Rohini talked about this in her talk, is we have to remember how vulnerable young people are. So if you take anything away from my talk today, I hope it's going to be that we have to be walking the talk and not just be talking the talk. So I'm going to be talking about those actions. We're going to start with what is management, again, considering my perspective of what I believe management to be. What is leadership? We're going to add a little bit of theory to the leadership concept, and then strategies to show up as a leader, which I highly recommend. So let's talk with management. I want to take you down the past, the now, and the future. When we talk about management, it's really, really important to put on a timeline what management really is, how it started, and where it's going. And keeping in the back of your mind this idea of, is management leadership, and is leadership another style of management? So I want to take you back to the history. When I did my research, a gentleman by the name of Frederick Winslow Taylor came to mind. And he is known as one of the earliest proponents or the drivers of a management theory. He is a mechanical engineer who authored the Principles of Scientific Management in 1909. So we're going way back to 1909 when we're talking about this. And he talks about management at the most basic level. So the theory he proposed was, it was all about simplifying jobs. And he thought that by keeping things simple, And this was his argument, that productivity in the workplace would improve. He also argued in his theory that managers and employees really need to be working together. So going back in the early 20th century, most companies still worked as dictatorships, and the managers would assign the work and the employees did the work. And I want to leave you with that thought just for a minute. I really want you to think about that. So the theory of management began when companies and organizations were really a dictatorship. Managers told employees what to do, employees did what they were asked to do, and that is how work was simplified. Now that takes us back to 1909. We are now currently living through a global pandemic. It's 2021. We are all working in some capacity on a digital platform. What does that really mean for those of us who, prior to the pandemic, were working in a physical presence? Well, that means that management, or if we look at the style of management that many of us may have been going through, was a style where we would be working close by or in close proximity to our line managers or our leaders. And that meant that they could keep an eye on what we were doing. And of course, we would feel like we were seen doing what we're doing. And I think I want you to remember this. Management was able to see us doing what we were doing, and we felt seen. And while they saw us doing what we were doing, did that mean that we worked better? Were we more efficient? Did we work harder? Or was it just because having them in our presence meant that we could be seen doing work? Through the pandemic, some of the challenge that I've seen in my interviews with professionals or in my sessions with young professionals and my sessions with students across the college is that they were struggling with the concept of working on a digital platform because their biggest concern was, did their line managers know that they were working? This concern is a real concern. And that's where we are right now. Now, why am I saying this to you? Why is this important? Because if management is still going to be working in the style of the early 1900s, where managers did tell their employees what to do and the employees did that, how well would we be functioning working in our current platform of virtual and digital platforms, of working in one physical place when our managers are working in another? And this was the stress that we saw come to life at the beginning of the pandemic. And depending on who you ask about this, whether it be a young person in a classroom or it be a young professional in the workplace, or even a professional, a very well-seasoned professional who was not used to working in a different environment to their managers, adjusting to that change was really, really challenging. And for some and for many, it still is very, very challenging. So what does that mean for the future of management? I want to remind you that I'm talking to you from my experience, from the studies that I've been doing, from my learning journey, from talking to professionals, and from listening and looking and learning at what we see in our current environment and where we're heading. As a careers practitioner, what we see is that the workplace is digitalized in some capacity, if not all. It is digitalized. We are living in a time when learning in a primary school is being done on a virtual platform. We have never seen this before. All over the world, teachers who never really thought that their role would become a role that would be on a digital platform had to teach their students remotely using platforms like Teams, Zoom, Google Classroom, using these platforms with very, very little training. Then, of course, we have those freelancers who have been constantly working on digital platforms, which they're very, very common, they're very, very accustomed to doing. So the digital workplace is already here, and we know it's not going to go anywhere. Regardless of what happens through this pandemic, I believe that we have seen a change in the workplace that means that management has got to change as well. Then we're preparing young people for something that we call the side hustle. The side hustle means that we are no longer preparing young people for that one job for life. That doesn't exist anymore. It means that our young people have to get used to self-managing. There's a high level of increase in students wanting to go down entrepreneurship at university and in their workplace. Entrepreneurs are young people and seasoned career people who own their own business. They are their own brand and they work for themselves, but they also work within other organizations and enterprises. And then there's the enterprise within the enterprise. And that means that you could have a brand that is honed in an enterprise, but could be running in parallel to that enterprise. Again, we see that traditional management styles could not support an individual in that enterprise. Social actions are dominating across the globe. Young people are very, very vocal, and so they should be, about what they're most passionate about. And what we're hearing from young people is they're passionate about making an impact in the global community. And that means, again, that our style of 1900s management really won't take our young people through to the future. There's a generational gap in the workplace. That means that the gap has different generations working alongside each other with a much louder, vocal, younger generation. So although the generation gap seems wide, it's actually narrowing. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with a professional that I interviewed through the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, his retirement was fast forward to the present. What he thought would mean another 5 years of employment suddenly became his reality through that pandemic. Yesterday, when he reached out to me, he was describing a situation where he felt ageism was a real issue. Now, we're talking about a man who had over 35 years in a wealth of experience across the financial platforms. This is a man who probably was seen as an incredible leader in a capacity where now he's feeling that he no longer can find his place because young people seem to be dominating in his industry. So that generational gap is really narrowing. And that means that we have to really reflect on, I'm going to go back to it, the management styles from the early 1900s. And then we are still encouraging young people to work on autopilot and go down that degree path without really taking enough time to reflect on the big why. What is the return on investment? I believe that if a young person is given the opportunity to go off and study, I believe they should take that opportunity because education is empowerment. However, I also believe that we should be guiding young people to be making choices at the next academic pathway that will empower them with knowledge, it will empower them with information, and it will empower them with the competitive cutting edge. And that means that the old style of management has got to be different. So moving forward on this, I want to take you through what I think management is. Although in the 1900s, it might have been a tool that managers were using to ensure that they could have the most productivity from their employees, management has now become a title. It's on your business card. It's on your name tag. It's something that is in a title, and it's a title that we earn through experience and climbing that corporate ladder. But I also believe that it's a way of keeping the flow going. And what I mean by that is it's one thing to say that I am a manager. It's another thing to be able to manage. Working with teams and working with people from a different generational gap means that we have to be able to really keep our mind on the big goal and be able to keep our team members working in a flow. And this is going to make more sense as we move forward. So I want to give you some food for thought. I want you to think about the work market right now, as it is right now. I did some research, and what I found is that the unemployment rate is peaked, and it's being compared to data that was collected in the late 1940s. So 1948, April 2020, which is a month, this was taken in April 2020, there was Before the decline, there was still an elevated level in December. It was 6.7%. So we're seeing that unemployment rates have peaked and they're being compared to the 1940s. Digital workplaces are leading. The work market is still struggling to stay alive. As we speak, the pandemic is still ongoing. And it is, yes, we do have the vaccination program. Yes, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we still have a long way to go before the work market is at that healthy stage that we want it to be at. We still have unemployment. We still have people that have lost their jobs and trying to find their place again. Digital workplaces are leading. I want to remind you, if we were not in a digital workplace before the pandemic, we didn't have time to train. I remember doing talks for young people and saying, the future of careers is digital, the future of careers. And that future always felt like a long time away. Suddenly, it was March 2020, and that future was now. And this is not going anywhere. So if we are not empowering ourselves with digital knowledge and digital awareness, what does that mean for us as the digital workplaces are leading? As I said before, generational gaps are narrowing, but they're also creating ageism. Gone are the days when being too young and having little experience was a challenge. Now, what we're seeing is that being young means that you can strive to get those jobs, because being older and more weathered in your career is suddenly being seen as not the lucrative perspective that we want to be taking. Or is this the perspective of people who are in that very selective age group, which I would put myself in as well, thinking about, well, where do I fit in? How will I slide back into the employment pool if I'm not able to keep up with that digital technology? And we have to remember something else, is that educational skills are increasing. Gone are the days when a bachelor's degree was the most empowering piece of document that you had. A bachelor's degree today is probably as powerful as a high school diploma would have been a few years ago, or many, many years ago. Bachelor's degrees right now are just as common as going to secondary school. It is very, very rare that we have conversations with young people in trying to encourage them to go to university. On the contrary, what we're seeing right now is young people not thinking that there is an alternative path. But with the increase of master's degrees and PhD degrees and postgraduate degrees come the ego. And this is something that we are seeing very, very often in secondary schools, is that I'm attached to my academic journey. I'm attached, my grade is my identity. My degree is who I am. And what we're seeing in the workplace is that your degree is important, but it is not your identity. And sometimes it's not as important as you think it is. So let's move into what is leadership. And I break this down into 3 parts. What I know for sure is that leadership is not a title. Leadership is not something that you see on your business card. It's not something that you see on your name tag. It's something that we see. It is a tagline. It is a trend. We see more of it. As we said before, it's something we expect young people to have, but I don't believe that it is a title. I'm going to take you through 3 points. Power and rank. It's not a linear experience, and I do believe that it's transformational. So what does this mean? Power and rank is a title. The title of leader, the title of manager gives you power and rank. And what does that mean? It means that if I am your line manager, if I am your manager, if I am your leader in the capacity that it's in my title, people will naturally listen to me because I have that title. But does that mean that I have a high ranking in their perspective? No, it doesn't. It just means that I have a corporate ranking and a corporate power. I believe that your character can also give you power and rank. If you have a character that makes people feel empowered, you are naturally going to be put up on their ranking of the most empowering people that they will have in their lives. Your actions also give you power and rank. Now, your actions can work for you and they can also work against you. I can be your manager. I can be given that title. I can be given the title of leadership. But if I constantly break you down in the workplace, if I constantly find your faults, if I constantly show you that you are not as important to the workplace or you are not as valuable to the workplace, then quite naturally, the individual that looks up to me is no longer going to look up to me in high ranking. They're just going to be afraid of me. And they're going to keep me on that power level, but they're not really going to feel empowered in my presence. And the most important thing of all, I believe, is your reputation. And I say this to every young person I come across or careers practitioners, we're only as good as our last experience. We are only as good as the last customer that left our service or bought our product. Reputation is really the perfume that takes you down the pathway ahead. With the social media as empowered as it is today, instantly at a fingertip, your last customer experience will define what your next customer experience might look to you for, or even how you are experiencing your leadership styles with your teammates or with your colleagues. That goes a long way. So I want you to pay more attention to your reputation, what people feel like when they're around you, and really consider the impact of your leadership style when you're working, not just with people that you believe are people that can help you climb the ladder, but really with everybody. I remember growing up and being told the saying, and it was, be nice to everybody in the workplace because you're the person that you see in the lowest ranking in your organization potentially can be your employer tomorrow. And I always walk away in any experience or in any capacity that I can, and I reflect on that. And I would like for you to reflect on that as well. The person that you are today is who you are because of the experiences that you had in the past. Some of those experiences challenged you. Some of those experiences helped you thrive, but all of those experiences taught you what power and rank looks like in the workplace. I want to talk to you about the linear experience. I don't believe that leadership is a linear experience. I believe that it is almost like a tango, a dance. You go forward, you move backwards, sometimes you sway from side to side. And it's in that flow of leadership that leaders can be building a rapport with their members, with their colleagues. In that experience, in that circular, in that wave, in that flow, there will be times when trust has to be built, whether it be with a new colleague joining your team. If you're a young person listening to this talk, it could be that you have to have new peers around you and building that trust, or having a new teacher in building that trust, or that teacher building trust with you. If you're a young professional listening in and watching this, it's in helping you to understand that when you join the workplace or when you begin your own brand, we have to remember that your power and rank, remember when we talked about that reputation, that gave the individuals around you an essence of how trustworthy you are in their presence. And it's really, really important for you to remember that. So you could be building trust and gain conviction and show that you have efficacy and capacity and knowledge and everything that makes you an empowering leader. But then you make a mistake and do something, because we're humans and we have those human experiences, and trust can be broken. So trust is in that flow. It's in that dance, that tango, that whatever kind of a visual that you want to have. It's in that flow that it goes forward, it moves backwards, and confidence is constantly growing. People are feeling more confident around you based on how that last experience with you was. Most often, teachers are teaching in a classroom with young people that have already formed a judgment on their leadership style based on the experiences they heard from peers that had taken those classes in the past. With LinkedIn, as powerful as it is today, young people are looking to platforms like that to learn about the recommendations of people, of leaders, of schools, of educators. So we have to remember that in building that trust, in building that confidence, we have to be swaying backwards and forwards because leadership is not a linear experience. And then I want to talk about transformational. I believe that leadership is a transformational experience, whether it be positive or it be challenging. It's always transformational because leadership is about focusing on the relationships between the line manager, the members and their team members and clients. Our experiences, even on a digital platform like we are right now, is a relational experience. And in being a human relational experience, even if we're using digitalized platforms, we are still transforming relationships and building on those relationships. So leaders really need to be paying more attention to the rapport that they're building with their employees. I want to take you back to the early 1900s when management would tell their employees what to do because they were looking for the most productivity. And I want you to consider the power and rank of those managers in the past. And then I want you to remember that young people, as we were talking about before, they have a social impact wish and desire. They want to be heard. They want their voices to be heard. And that means that this transformational leadership style is so very important. We want to be promoting high quality rapport building relationships between leaders and their employees, leaders and their members. We no longer call them employees. We call each other members because we're members of a team, whether it be in the capacity of a leadership role or in a new entry level. We are working together towards a common goal, and that is building our brands together. So it's important that we're promoting these high quality relationships because in speaking with professionals and in hearing the speakers today, the common theme that I hear over and over again is do what you love what you do, and you're going to be thriving at work. And because you're thriving, because you're filled with energy, you're going to be performing at a higher capacity. And our leaders need to be paying attention because this is what works in 2021. Leaders must help their team. A transformational experience does not see a leader sitting at a desk while the members do all the work. A leader works with their members. A leader has a level of efficacy. Yes, they might have more experience. They might have more knowledge, but most often they don't always have all the knowledge and they don't always have all the experience. But what they do have are incredible team members that they can be working together with to be building the brand. So pay attention, build the skills and the knowledge set of your team members. And that's how leadership becomes a transformational experience. I want to talk to you a little bit more about leadership in action. And this is really, really important. So these are my 4 tips. For anybody watching this, before I move on, I want to put my role into perspective. If we look at my job title, I'm a careers coach, and I take great pride in what I do. But alongside the role as a careers coach, I'm driving initiatives that help empower the youth in so many different capacities. Am I a leader with a title on my business card or a leader with a title on my tagline? No. But am I a leader in action? I believe that I am. In working with young people, I can honestly say that today was a clear example of the most incredible team that I have. I am currently leading a team of young people at Dubai English Speaking College. There are 14 teenagers working to make desk careers what it is today. Am I the person that has all the knowledge and all the skills? Well, in my role, I believe that I do have knowledge and I do have skills, but I am reaching out to young people, and that means that I need to be empowering young people. So my leadership in action sees me letting the people, these young teenagers leading desk careers, take initiative. But as a manager, I am helping to keep it in flow. And what that means is I'm not sitting and telling them what to do. I'm sitting and working alongside them, but reminding them about the bigger picture, reminding them about the flow. And I believe that's the difference between management and leadership. Leadership needs people who see the vision and who are able to act in leadership to be the role models to ensure that team members can be working alongside. But managers have to keep the bigger picture in mind and just make sure that the strengths of your team are being tapped into and everyone keeping in flow towards the goal. Otherwise, everybody's a dreamer and we don't really have any actions coming to life. But in order for that to work in flow, we have to build trust. We have to build rapport with all of our team members. And there are those of us who are watching from the audience of our team. And that's what I was talking about. So there will be people in the audience watching over what you do, not part of your team, but overlooking on digital platforms, in physical presence. And we have to remember that trust is something earned and it can be something lost in seconds. And I always talk to my audience with complete authenticity. I don't get it right all the time. In fact, I got it wrong a few weeks ago. I was working on a team to build this community, and we had a conversation where I left one of my team members feeling that they weren't really being seen, and they felt that I let them down. Now, I had two options in the capacity of saying, well, no, I did what I needed to do, and that was the right thing to do. Or I could have said, you know what, I'm sorry you felt that way, but this was the vision, and let's have a conversation. Now, in order for that conversation to happen, it's important that the leader is making space for that conversation, but taking ego out of it. So we have to be spending every day building that rapport. And when the rapport comes apart, we have to find ways to weave it back together. And we're not always going to get it right. And that's part of the human experience. It's also very important that we stay aligned. We have to be aligned with the organization's brand, vision, and values. We are walking in the brand that we are promoting, whether it be Dubai English Speaking College, or it be any of the other organizations or any of the other initiatives that we're part of. We are walking the brand. And that means that we have to be aligned. We need to know what is the vision of the organization. And that is the bigger picture that I'm talking about. That's what managers and leaders want to be remembering. That when they're leading a team, it's not about their ego. It's not about feeling like the most important person in the room. It's really about ensuring that everybody feels aligned with what we're doing and why we're doing it. It's important that the values of the individual, what's important to the individual, and the values of the organization are aligned as well. Sometimes we need to be tweaking what those values are. And what that means is helping people on the team to understand, hey, this is what's important to you, but in different terminology, it's actually important to us as an organization as well. So if we go back to that transformational leadership style that I was talking about, it is really in that leader-member exchange. And this is an actual theory. It's called the Lmx Theory. And it's a theory of leadership that ensures that leaders and their members are building rapport and making sure that they're aligned with that vision and that brand. But I think as well, it's important that leaders in action think inside the box, keeping aligned with the organizational brand, vision, and values, but also thinking out of the box. Days like today don't happen if we think inside the box. We have to have the courage to think outside the box. But it's not important to only think outside the box. It's really important to communicate what it looks like to think outside the box. Leaders are those role models, but the people that put these things in action are not the leaders in isolation. It's the whole team in combination. We need to be communicating the brand, the vision, and the values. We need to be integrating with our team, and we need to be nominating leaders. And that means that holding out your hands for someone else in the organization that you believe has what it takes to be the leader that we know they can be. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. But it's all about flowing in the moment. So if you remember, I talked about leadership not being a linear experience because I believe that it is not. And it's a flow of being in the moment. A leader has to keep their eye on that bigger picture. The bigger picture in this community is the empowerment of young people and careers education. I believe that careers education will see that young people are taking on leadership, but they're taking them on a conscious level. In order to empower the youth, we need organizations and institutions like Dubai English Speaking School and Heartland School and Al Diyar School and Curtin University in Dubai. We need organizations like this to be empowering the youth. But we also need leaders in education, leaders in the world of work to be empowering young people and letting them have a voice and letting them communicate. So we have to be in the flow of the moment. We cannot survive a pandemic in the workplace if we're not in the moment. We cannot hold firm to our beliefs of what management should be if young people have a louder voice. We have to be in the flow of the moment. And that means we need to get comfortable by being uncomfortable. Earlier on today, I was in the audience and listening to Patrick Amtaki talk about if plan A doesn't work out, what are the other plans? He talked about being in that flow. And he talked about the eye on the bigger picture. And what that means is being okay with change, being okay with understanding that what we thought would be the way might not be the way. And that is important if we want our brands to survive. So some of my strategies to show up as a leader in your brand, these are some of the things that I believe we need to be leaders. First, identify your skills and grow through your challenges. What does that mean? It means take time to self-reflect. If we think about leadership see people and leaders reflecting on their leadership skills, reflecting on their strengths, reflecting on their professional and personal development, and growing through those challenges. We are human beings, and that means that, as Brene Brown will always say, we are perfectly imperfect. And that means through those imperfections, we are allowing our team members to understand that we're not perfect. We will get it wrong sometimes, but this is how we thrive and this is how we grow. Grow through your challenges. Don't hide your challenges. Let your team know that you have challenges, because by your growth potential, you're allowing them to feel like they can grow as well. It's very, very important to put your ego to the side when you go to work. And sometimes that's really hard because we can come across as having all the knowledge and being really wise and feeling like we have to get it right all the time. And that means that the ego comes to life. We really want to be practicing more humbleness. And that doesn't mean that you're not important in your capacity. It just means that it's not important to be the most important person in the room. What's important is that your team is thriving and that your brand is thriving as well. Maximize your team strengths. A couple of days ago, my principal came into the office and we had a guest, and he was taking our guest through, and I was really, really inspired because he had a conversation with the interns for Desk Careers. And they were telling him about what they do. And it's really inspiring because Desk Careers, although I am the face as the careers coach, Desk Careers really is not me. It is all the young people that take it through at Dubai English Speaking College. And he asked them, how incredible are all the jobs that you're doing? Miss V, what do you do? And I really had to chuckle through that, because I knew that I was doing something right, because that meant that I was maximizing my team's strengths. So let me put this into context with you. I am a woman in her late 40s. My team members are 16, 17. I have some team members who are only 12 years old. These are the members who saw this service thriving today through this career fair. I've been on this platform hosting talks through Room 3 while my team of teenagers was taking the college through this event all day, managing different rooms across the college. That meant that their strengths were seeing us through an event like this. If I were working in the capacity of a 1900 management style, I would have been highly stressed today. But actually, today was a day of fun and there was a lot of laughter. We had so much fun through this experience, and everyone on the team felt like they were providing something that added value. And we all went home feeling like we were thriving. I encourage you to maximize your team's strengths. If I had ego, I would be on a platform that would see my teenage team members feeling small. But today, I believe they felt bigger than life because they were maximizing on those strengths. Another thing I encourage you to do is maximize your team reflection. Whenever I make a mistake or when something feels like it's going right, I take the time to reflect. When my team leaves at the end of their shift, I always try to remember to ask them. Now, remember, I'm human, I make mistakes too. But the question I like to ask my team is, did you have fun today? Because I know that if they did have fun, they were enjoying their day and they were using their strengths. If the answer is no, I wasn't, then I want to reflect on what did I bring to the table that didn't allow my team members to enjoy their day. And then maximize your team flow. And that means there will be things that go wrong. Today was an incredible day for us, but so many things behind the scenes didn't go as planned. For example, my virtual background, something that we were encouraging our guests to have perfect through the entire event, my virtual background didn't work. So my team were solution makers. We all gathered together and we put together posters that had a new background. And then we realized that, you know what, it really wasn't doing justice to the event. So we brainstormed together and off they went and they found this incredible background that we have. Now, if I was stuck in my idea of what I wanted it to be, I would have found this a really stressful experience, but I had to go with the flow. Behind the scenes were other members of the UAE careers community managing 2 other rooms. Shweta and Karishni from Curtin University, Dubai, were managing the other rooms, and we were having chuckles. We had walkie-talkies on our phones. We were using digital devices to stay in contact. And we were all having that flow of what wasn't going well and what we could do to make it work. It's important to have that flow because whether you're a leader or whether you're a team member, we all have one thing in common. We're human. We make mistakes. Things don't go according to plan. And right now, on a global scale, nobody is living the ideal scenario. The pandemic has forced us to accept the challenges and go with the flow. Leaders need to lead in action and not on the sideline. Never will you find me telling people what to do without doing it with them. It is not fair for a leader to be sitting at a platform and telling people what to do unless they can have empathy and understand what it's like to do those tasks. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that leaders do have important things that might see them doing larger tasks. But what that means is allow your team to see you cheerleading them and working alongside them. Let leaders roll up their sleeves and help their members doing those tasks that members will feel proud to do because they look up to their leaders. And finally, show your confidence in kindness. Remember what I was talking about, your reputation, how you make people feel, the rapport that you build with your team. These are all things that will see confidence in kindness. Make somebody on your team feel like they're the most important person in the room when you are talking to them. Be kind to them. When something doesn't go right, don't remind them about all the things that they've ever done wrong. Encourage them through that kindness. And that doesn't mean pretend that everything's going right. It means normalize some of the challenges that they're facing and remind them about the incredible things that they've done in the past. So what I want to remind everyone is we never stop learning. So leaders need to keep reading. We are leaders and we have the ability to lead, but leading it's not the final destination. It's a work in progress. And that means that we're always going to be learning. There will always be theories from the past that get reinvented for the future. Lead by learning and grow by succeeding, and enjoy the journey of leadership, because it's about being conscious in that leadership. So self-reflect. Reflexivity is a really important skill. It's a methodology in leadership that requires us to constantly think about the power that we bring to the role, the rank that we bring to the role, and the power struggles that we see in our team relationships. What kind of rapport are we building? How are we encouraging and empowering? And how are we leading by example? So the question really is, are you going to be a leader? And a leader is somebody who leads consciously. And are you ready to lead consciously? Because by leading consciously, what that really means is that we are in that flow. And that brings me to the end of my talk. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can have a Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? I can't see anything coming through the chat box. Feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to ask me any questions. Okay, so I think that brings me to the end of my talk. I hope you enjoyed that. Everil, thank you for your comments. It was really fun to be here, and I hope that you all enjoyed listening to my view and my perspective, telling my stories about management and leadership. And I'm going to encourage you all to come back in 10 minutes when I'm going to be turning the platform over to one of the most inspiring teenagers I have come across this year. Her name is Soumya Lakshmanan, and she is the Vice President of the Interact at Desk. She is almost 17 years old, and she is leading by example. Thank you, everybody, for coming and watching me. And I hope to see you back here at 6 o'clock when we welcome Soumya Lakshmanan and Interact at Desk. Thank you, everybody.